So it appears Ming-Chi Kuo looked under some couch cushions and pulled out a whole new MacBook, which we're finding out now is actually not too far away. I know when there's dry seasons in tech, it gets easy for us to start talking about next year's iPhone and then 3-year iPhones from now. But no, he's saying this new MacBook is supposed to come out near the end of this year / early next year, depending on how the manufacturing of it goes. But looks like it will no longer just be MacBook Air and MacBook Pro anymore. Let's begin. So I have to say, these reports kind of got me excited at first glance because they indicate Apple is planning on using an iPhone processor for a cheaper MacBook, which because iPhone CPUs have gotten so fast and a lot of people using MacBooks don't need even the performance of the base model binned M4 chip, this makes a lot of sense to me. In fact, the A18 Pro, which is likely going to be plenty for a base model Mac, probably is already starting to outperform the regular M1 chip in many ways, which lots of people are still using M1 MacBook Airs, MacBook Pros, even Mac Minis that still work fine because this ARM architecture ages fairly well and had a lot of overhead built in. But the main reason I was excited was because the last time we had a regular MacBook, it was ironically the thinnest, lightest laptop in the lineup. Not the Air, which feels a little bit bizarre, but it's not like Apple has been very consistent with the Air meaning thin and lightweight. Air typically just means cheaper. I mean, look at the iPad Pros. Those are still technically the thinnest iPads ever, and the iPad Air is still a thing. It's just thicker and heavier, which doesn't make much sense, but it exists today. Doesn't seem like they're changing that anytime soon, but similar to how there's a cheap base model regular iPad with a non-laminated display but a little bit more colors, sounds like that's what Apple has in store for the MacBook. iPhone CPU powering it on the inside, and also sounds like a little bit more colors to choose from than even the Air is offering. But what disappointed me about this report is that it's not supposed to be a revival of that amazing and incredible 12-inch MacBook design, which is super thin, super lightweight. Keyboard goes right to the edge of the chassis, and still, to this day, it is the only MacBook that I've been capable of typing on with just my thumbs. That's how small and lightweight it is, and I was hoping they would revive that, or at least bring it back for the MacBook Air line, but they're saying this cheaper, more colorful iPhone-powered MacBook is supposed to be rocking the exact same display as the base model MacBook Air, or at least the same size at 13 inches. I really hope they don't just call this a regular MacBook and throw an iPhone CPU and call it a day, because my guess is that would only be around $100 cheaper, in which case, sure, I guess it's nicer that the entry point went down, but I feel like it would be a lot more interesting if the cheaper base model MacBook was actually more like $300 cheaper than the base MacBook Air, targeting a price point around $699. That would be really interesting, because then a lot more college students or people on budgets could actually get into the Mac OS family, start to give Microsoft a little bit more of a run for their money. Obviously, there's way cheaper Chromebooks and PCs out there, but this thing's still going to be rocking Apple Silicon and probably going to work with their iPhone a lot better than any other $700 laptop they can find. But I'm okay if they have to take out some other features to separate this MacBook a bit from the Air. Like maybe the display doesn't quite get as bright, maybe it doesn't have center stage. I don't know, maybe they drop Touch ID and just decide, you can just type in your password like the old days. I'm not sure exactly how they can take that much more money out of the build, but I think it would be really, really exciting to see how the Mac market share could grow in the scenario that they started hitting substantially lower price points. Not just shave $100 off, because at that point, might as well just buy a MacBook Air off of Amazon, because it's probably $100 cheaper there anyway. This also gets me excited because Ming-Chi Kuo, if he ends up being right about this one, and because it's somewhat recent, I think he is, it indicates that the A18 Pro chip is actually capable of running fully fledged Mac OS. Maybe it doesn't run it as well as an M4 chip, but to me, that further supports the viewpoint that iPhones, given the right silicon and the right USB-C port on there, could actually run fully fledged Mac OS when docked with an external monitor. That gets me really pumped and really excited. So if this further supports my thesis that yes, you can put Mac OS on a series of chips. If the A12Z Mac Mini dev kit from 5 years ago wasn't proof enough already, this would also support that concept, which I think is inevitably where tech is headed. People aren't buying iMacs as much anymore because MacBooks are just as powerful, and they've reached a point where they're cheaper. You can just dock it with an external monitor, and I think the next evolution of that is an iPhone that you can dock with a monitor and then just have a wireless keyboard and mouse. Boom! Now you have a desktop experience powered by your iPhone, and your iPhone can be the webcam. Probably much better than any webcam they would ship in the laptop itself, but just let continuity camera become the only camera, right? That would be kind of my dream setup. But what do you guys think Apple could be cooking with this cheaper MacBook? You want a revival and a refresh of that incredibly thin and lightweight 12-inch MacBook? Maybe that can become the Air, and what is currently the Air just becomes the regular MacBook because it gets the basics done. All those thoughts, feel free to let me know what you're thinking down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you all in the next one.